For this last segment, Jarita, Hakeem, and Ashley discuss methods they use to survive in their field while also paving a path for future astronomers of color.
So I cannot tell you what I conclude as to why astronomy, it's okay to have more women, and in physics, it's okay to have men of color. And so that was one of the many projects which I proposed to study and didn't get the funding for. But I did the background on it, which is why I know that statistic is true. And we had, of course, I think there were 4 theories that we were looking at. Because it's inconsistent across the 2 disciplines, you never know which one is at play. But I'll tell you the 4 theories. One is visual dominance, right? That you may be getting further in the field if you are smaller and lighter skinned. So you're not reminding people that you're black and that you're big and scary. The other was, of course, the myth of white intellectual superiority and black intellectual inferiority. And I interrogate mentors about this all the time, that there's the differential treatment of mentoring of students of color. You know, they do a lot of things for their white male students that they just don't do for anyone else. Intersectionality. Depending on the discipline, they only want one flavor of diversity, right? So if you're intersectional, then you're never fitting in a box.
Yeah, okay.
So you're beyond their experience, and they don't want any more experience.
Yeah.
So they don't understand that, like, you can be very intersectional, you can be very, very diverse. You know, one thing that we noticed that disappointed us the most is that people look at us and say, oh, they're nerds, or oh, they have this perception of what Black scientists are supposed to be.
Yeah.
We listen to rap in our labs.
Right.
They have this idea that, all of us are like super nerdy. And yes, I watch Love and Hip Hop on one day, and I will turn around that neck and watch anime.
Day one, my manager takes me to introduce me to his manager, and his peer is there, and they're talking about this particular problem. And I listen to them, and I go, well, excuse me, I kid you not, it's my day one. And I go, I bet it's this right here and the other. Right here's what it is. And they look at each other, they pause, and they go, nah. Manager specifically ordered me not to work on it. And I did work on it, and I completed it. And that ended up taking his career up, and I got 3 patents out of the deal, and a new business group of the company was formed around this product, right? And so nobody saw this, right? Nobody, and it's just a different perspective on something everybody sees, but no one sees it.
Yeah.
And that's quite often, like a genius comedian like Chris Rock, right? What they do is they'll verbalize what everybody knows, but no one ever says.
Yes, right.
Right? So this diversity of thought and experience matters a lot.
Yeah.
For us getting the answers and solving all these problems.
Yeah.
We do live in a system where groups are kept out in various systematic ways.
Sure.
And that does us all.
Right.
Because when I hear successful people, even successful African American people, they'll talk about like, oh, if you work hard, and somehow if you work hard, you have God, you'll, because they made it. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. It takes a measure of luck, and you need help.
And you find that to be true in the STEM fields?
Definitely in the STEM fields. There is nobody in my community, man. I'm so lucky, right? I'm so lucky. I could trace back my life story where if this person had shown, this person had shown, this person, somebody has to help you because you have no idea what it is you're doing. Suppose it is possible to build a time machine. Suppose it is possible to build a warp drive. If there was one person on Earth who knew how to do it, there would be hundreds of people who know how to do it, right? But because there is no one, there is no one.
As you continue down this path, though, you're going to become, I don't know, you'll be in the first 10, certainly, maybe in the first 5 African American women in astrochemistry. Do you feel like a pioneer?
At times. At times. But I'm definitely honored for those women that came before me.
This certainly has to be the largest class of African American women involved in astronomy and physics. How do you account for that, Jarita? Do you think how do you account for that surge?
I really hope that I'm part of the reason.
Yeah.
I think that my article on, the survival strategies of African American students, my going and basically cursing people out all over the United States,
Yes.
and also mentoring those students. And I know where African American students can survive.
Mm-hmm. There are more than one of you, but there's one of you. You really make an effort to make this happen. And I guess I'm thinking that, should it really have to be that way? Or can you see some time in the future that you don't have to be so hands-on? Not that you don't want to be, but that you don't have to be.
Right? So, I'm a social scientist and a physical scientist.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I do interview-based inquiry. I use anthropological methods. And so I can really frame it in a way that's social science logic, but I can say it in a way that a physical scientist can understand because of my training.
Yeah.
In terms of the men who are doing this kind of activist work, they can't be as obnoxious as I can be because they're big.
Well, wait,
right?
Hold on. So Hakeem's doing very well for himself, though.
Hakeem has a self-deprecating humor that he pulls out.
Yeah, that's true.
Right, so he's very strategic in when he presents something,
that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
And he when I give talks with Hakeem, basically bows to how obnoxious I can be with a smile. He's like, I don't know how you can sit there smiling and talk about these horrendous things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, if you do it with a smile, then people will listen to you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, having grown up in a small town in Mississippi, typically you have the white store and the black store.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
And if you stop at the white store, you stopped at the white store because all action stops. Nobody's hostile. They just get quiet and look at you.
Right. They just wonder, why are you here when you're supposed to be over at the black store?
Right. Mm-hmm. Or you ain't from here or something like that. Right.
Right.
And so at 30, what happened is I left the country for the first time. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like when you yawn and your ears pop, and you didn't even realize they were clogged. But once they,
Interesting.
They're like, because you've lived in a white country your entire life, you don't realize that there's this pressure that you have on you. And when you go to Africa, it's gone, and you feel this sense of relief for something you didn't even know existed, right? So when I started taking those trips across northern Louisiana, that phenomenon would happen to me. I was like, oh, you know what I'll do? I'll just pretend I'm in a foreign country. So in their silence, I don't know what they're thinking, right? Because if I'm just like, hi, how are you? Good morning, right? It does create a different vibe in them.
So
it's because
So you figured out a way to dispense with carrying that baggage that's imposed on you by somebody else.
That's right. It's their problem, not mine.
In actuality, science is a natural truth, but we must not lose sight of cultures of prejudice and bigotry that permeate our history and persist even today. Science is not an exception in this reality. We must collectively acknowledge, discuss, and reform these infrastructures that provide foundation for these deeply embedded behaviors, from our communities to our classrooms and into our careers. I'd like to thank Jarita, Hakeem, and Ashley for their time, for their perspective, and for doing the work that will allow all of us to enjoy the cosmos.